Hi everybody, you're listening to Comics and History, episode number 103, Spotlight on Green Lantern Alan Scott in the Copper Age. And welcome to the show. I am your host, Brian J. Rygate, and class is back in session. And folks, before I get into my spotlight on Earth's first Green Lantern during the publication years 1986 through 1994, a bit of sad news to pass your way. You will notice that from this point onwards, things are going to sound quieter in comics and history land. That's due to the fact that at the start of May, I had to bid farewell to my dear friend and unofficial co-host of Comics and History, my cat Dickens. He'd been in ill health for a few days, actually more than a few days, but it was in his last days where things got really tough for him. And he made it quite clear that he wasn't willing to put up with the pain anymore. He just wasn't having it with life. And so at that point, I made the decision that I needed to say goodbye to him. And the reason why I'm bringing this up over the air is because over the last 3 years, a number of you out there have written in to say that you thought it was really funny to hear this cat purring in the background, and in fact Dickens was right up in my face a lot of the time, so if things ever sound muffled, it was him gently nudging his way over the airwaves. So this episode in particular is dedicated to the memory of my friend Dickens, who I would like to think is taking a time out from playing with my boy Jonathan to listen to this very recording. Alright, so let's begin, and we are continuing our look at the history, the publication, and fictional character history of the first character in DC Comics history to bear the name Green Lantern, Alan Scott. This time we're looking at Alan's history during a rather interesting and some might say contentious time in DC Comics, and that's the Copper Age, corresponding to the end of the Crisis on Infinite Earths in 1986, going up until mid-1994 with the publication of the Zero Hour event. And I say it's a contentious time because this was a roughly 8-year period in which DC had a very back and forth policy with regards to embracing its Golden Age history, its legacy, the very characters who were first spawned by the company or companies that eventually became DC all the way back in the late 30s and early 40s. If you want a visual, you can think about the JSA all being pinned to a giant pendulum swinging back and forth, as at the start of the Copper Age, DC had no real interest in continuing to publish stories about its Golden Age, more specifically Justice Society characters, while at the midpoint of the Copper Age, the pendulum swung quite sharply to the other side, with DC favoring a return of its Golden Age characters to the DC universe, and returning these characters to publication. And then at the end of the Copper Age, with Zero Hour, the pendulum shifting finally back to its original position, with DC editorial deciding to put the JSA in publication limbo once more. So this, I think, is going to be a two-part episode, even though Alan Scott, along with his JSA cohorts, were actually missing for roughly half of this time period. Alan would actually go through an interesting transformation in the last couple of years of the Copper Age. And I'm going to find myself talking about certain other events like Last Days of a Justice Society, Zero Hour, of course, Armageddon 2001. So get strapped in and be ready for 2 weeks worth of Alan Scott goodness. All right, so Copper Age begins in 1986, and at the outset, it certainly appeared that Alan Scott and the rest of the JSA would enjoy a place in the post-crisis DCU. Of course, they were all seen going to the Positive Matter universe, going to the newly merged, streamlined Earth at the end of Crisis. Just in terms of naming the post-crisis Earth, there have been a couple of terms I've heard. If you go through Mike's Amazing World of Comics, Mike refers to this new unified Earth as the merged Earth. I've heard the term Earth Sigma also being used to describe this Earth, which had rather nebulous existence during those first, I say, 3-4 months following the crisis. It was nebulous in that the general citizenry, as well as the villain community, save for Psychopirate, did not remember the crisis as it happened in the pages of the book, and they did not remember that there was a multiverse, whereas the hero community remembered the crisis as it was depicted by Marv Wolfman and George Perez. They remembered that there had been a multiverse, and more importantly, they remembered that they were all from different universes at some point. And so a large number of the DCU heroes in the post-crisis continuity at the outset saw themselves sort of as refugees. But now fans still thought that things would settle and Alan and the JSA would appear regularly in DC Comics. And that certainly seemed to be affirmed with the release of Wolfman and Perez's two-part history of the DC Universe, which gave a nice primer, a nice baseline for the general timeline of the post-crisis DCU. And history of the DC Universe established that in the 1940s, a young railroad engineer named Alan Scott would come across a mystical green railroad lantern, and he would use the power of the Green Lantern to fight evil using the name Green Lantern. And Alan's post-crisis status as Earth's first Green Lantern was further established in the pages of Volume 2 of Secret Origins. That would be issue number 18. And Secret Origins overlapped with Who's Who and continued after Who's Who wrapped up. And what a number of readers really enjoyed about Secret Origins was that it took the first, anywhere from 3 to 5 comic stories that a character originally appeared in, condensed those stories into one larger story, and just presented a nice origin for the character. And in the case of Golden Age characters who were receiving the Secret Origins treatment, this was really great because this was years before the archives and the chronicles came out. And so a lot of readers could not count on being able to get stories like All-American Comic 16, which featured Alan Scott's first appearance. So getting an issue of Secret Origins was a pretty nice second to that. And so issue 18 of the second volume of Secret Origins presented Alan Scott's origin. And I should say at this point that these were not necessarily the definitive post-crisis origins for the characters. Stories that took precedence were things like John Byrne's Man of Steel, Frank Miller's Batman Year One. These were seen as the definitive post-crisis origins. But you could think of these Secret Origins stories as like placeholders, with the general policy at DC Comics being that until a character got post-crisis revamp within their solo title or a solo miniseries, the pre-crisis history really stayed intact. And so the Secret Origins treatment for a lot of characters just served to tell readers, okay, the pre-crisis history is what we're going with for now. And Alan's story in Secret Origins number 18 was really neat because the introduction was actually narrated by the Starheart. And the Starheart explained that eons ago, the Guardians of the Universe, in an effort to bring order to a chaotic universe that had been beset by evil thanks to the machinations of the rogue Owen Krona, decided to collect all of the wild, random, chaotic magic in the universe, coalesce it, trap it in the heart of a star, hence the name Starheart, and send the Starheart off to the farthest reaches of the universe, where it would have no real sway over the continued evolution of the universe that would allow the Guardians to play a hand in establishing science as the main point of order in the universe. But over time, the Starheart gained sentience to the point where it willed a small, benevolent portion of itself to separate from the larger Starheart and travel throughout the cosmos. And as this small, benevolent piece of a Starheart reached Earth, it picked up space debris. And by the time it entered Earth's orbit and later crashed on Earth, this little piece of the Starheart had taken on the appearance, the feel, and the texture of a glowing green meteor. And so this Starheart meteor crashed in feudal China, where it was picked up by a man who fashioned a magic lamp. Out of this supposed meteor, the lamp would pass hands several times over the centuries until it got into the hands of a patient in an asylum who reshaped the lamp into a green railroad lantern, which was then picked up by young railroad engineer Alan Scott, who, at the behest of the seemingly sentient lantern, took an oath to shed the lantern's light over dark evil. And thus Alan became the Green Lantern. And the rest of Secret Origins number 18 retold some of Alan's earliest adventures as Green Lantern, as told in those old All-American comics. Really great story, written by Roy Thomas. He was a perfect choice to write this story, as well as the Secret Origins stories for the other Golden Age characters who were given the Secret Origins treatment. And I say that because Roy Thomas was the architect of the Earth 2 universe's history. And what was really neat for myself and other Canadian readers was that this story was penciled by legendary classic Captain Canuck artist George Freeman. And he gave Alan a great look. Freeman's Alan Scott was tall, robust, confident looking, chiseled features, powerful